Hello, these are clips from my recent speaking engagement at Binghamton University on environmental careers. Hope you enjoy.
Don't know, this event has been going on since 2022. Originally created and run by our very own, Harper Edge's very own Emily Lowe, who just graduated last year from Sustainable Communities. She was set to be here with us today, but unfortunately is too busy with her fancy fellowship at the Port Authority in New York. But we're very happy for her, we're so proud of her. Her goal with this event was to help provide students with the information and the confidence that we need to succeed. So I really hope that you guys will walk away from this feeling empowered, because we have some really excellent, inspiring panelists with some fantastic advice to give. And then before we start, I just want to say thank you to the Environmental Studies program, which is now, ta-da, as of this week, part of the brand new Department of Environment and Sustainability. Exciting. But I want to thank you guys for your support in putting on this event. It's really wonderful that you invest in your students' professional development. It's really great.
Sure, and thanks very much for having us here. Yeah, it's still dead. I'm never been accused of being hard to hear. At Flint, I direct clean energy programs at Network for Sustainable Tomorrow. I have 2 degrees from this institution, both in sociology. Network for Sustainable Tomorrow is a small sustainability nonprofit located in downtown Binghamton. We catalyze new initiatives. We focus heavily on clean energy solutions, and we have a very strong equity lens in what we do. I'm very proud to say we have a very successful internship program called the Energy Corps, which I will talk about when we come to that question. We're involved locally in a program called Binghamton Community Power, which is essentially an environmental justice focused program that provides capacity building and education in disadvantaged communities. We also gather data and help folks navigate programs. We spend a lot of time at this university at SUNY Broome and in high schools talking about clean energy careers and how you go about finding those. And we're engaged in a lot of other shenanigans in Albany. So that's us.
2006. But I've had this interest in environmental issues or topics just as an academic area since I was like 15 or 16. It was difficult to pinpoint exactly why. I was just drawn to earth science and geology, and I love systems. We were discussing, I love the interconnectedness of the environment and humans and animals. So I had this interest in high school, and when I came to Binghamton, the really incredible then environmental studies program, now has been elevated as we discussed, gave me such a great offering of courses, and the staff was so dedicated, and they really cared about, really in a very simplistic way, the environment. So for me, being here at Binghamton was super transformative in that it really exposed me to this wide array of it was almost like too much. Like, all right, what am I gonna do with this? I ended up working as a scientist for an environmental consulting firm right after graduating in May of 2006. Like 3 days later, I was up in New England working. And that gave me some great experience. I was working in the field as a field scientist, not getting paid anything. It was almost like an apprenticeship, but I was happy. I had health insurance. I was out in the field a few days a week, taking samples of soil, doing site inspections as part of telecom infrastructure projects and real estate projects, writing these reports called Phase 1 environmental site assessment reports and other types of reports. And that gave me some really good experience. And then as happens in this field, you kind of hit a ceiling very quickly in terms of like, all right, what am I gonna do next? What's gonna be my pivot? And I was considering grad school, possibly coming back here, maybe doing something down up in New England or back in New York City. And then I considered business school. I considered going back to undergrad and getting engineering, because engineering is so integral to environmental. And then my then girlfriend, now wife, reminded me that I at some point wanted to be an attorney. and I'm gonna say something not to speak poorly about the school, but one of the worst experiences in my life happened at the school, but turned out to be one of the best experiences in my life that happened at the school. I must have been a sophomore, and I went to the career office, and I said, hey, I want to be an I want to be an attorney. I didn't even say environmental attorney. I didn't know what an environmental attorney was at that point, but I think I want to go to law school, and the school has a really fantastic pre-law program. Because I'm an immigrant, and my English SAT scores weren't as strong as perhaps other students, or my math scores, my English SAT scores lagged behind. Now, my SAT overall, great enough to get to Binghamton, but this career counselor focused on that. And instead of encouraging me and saying, hey, you should consider joining the pre-law program, but let's work on ways to boost up your English, her response was, you shouldn't do the pre-law program. You're probably not going to be a good lawyer. You probably shouldn't consider taking the LSAT. You should instead focus on math and science. Now, terrible advice to give an 18-year-old. Like, top 5 worst things you could tell someone. I internalized that and said, well, this person knows more than me, so let me go to science. Now, terrible thing, turned out to be one of the best things for me. Now, I did go into science, and that experience as a scientist allowed me to then, when my wife, bring it back, my wife said, hey, you should go to law. And I said, I don't know if I can be a lawyer. That voice was still there. She goes, no, you're not a business person. Don't go to business school. Money doesn't interest you like that. Don't go to grad school, because you're not going to get anything out of grad school that you couldn't get out of law school. And definitely don't go back to undergrad to get a second BA. So I said, well, this girl likes me, and she seems to know what she's talking about. So I went to law school, and I haven't looked back. I love my career. I get to practice environmental law. I have the few years of environmental field work as a scientist. My English is fine. I don't need to take the LSAT again. I don't need to take the bar exam again. I'm licensed in New York and New Jersey. I passed both first time. On my way to being admitted to Pennsylvania as well. And so that's been my career journey. It's been kind of this patchwork of not really knowing what the end looks like, but just kind of focusing on what the next few years look like. And for everyone here, that's probably a healthy approach to look at things. I mean, you made a decision to be here for 3, 4, 5 years, depending on the program that you're in. And that's about as much time as you can do anything for 3 years. You can do anything for 4 years. And you'll figure out the rest later. But I've kind of treated my career, and even within the, as an environmental attorney, I kind of treat my career in kind of 3-year intervals where I say, all right, well, I want to do this. And if I don't like it, I'll pivot to something else. And if I do, I'll double down. So it's been, I don't know, I love what I do.
My name is Caitlyn Tucker. Thanks for having me and for being here. I graduated Binghamton with a degree in, similarly, the BA in Environmental Studies, Public Policy Administration, and Law. And that was in 2024, so not too far removed from you guys. I like to think. Yeah, and I work for Cornell Cooperative Extension. I specifically work out of the Tioga County office. There's offices in every county of New York State, and Tioga County is just one county west of where we are now. And I'm a community energy advisor, so what I do is I work with the NYSERDA programs to help low to moderate income households take advantage of some of their energy saving programs to reduce their energy burden and their utility costs, and make clean energy more accessible to everyone. Yeah, and we do a lot of public outreach in the community, and we do a lot of education as well. That's a core principle of extension. Yeah, that's it for me.
Very wonderful, thank you all.
So my program is funded by the NYSERDA Clean Energy Hubs. NYSERDA is the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority. I always try to say that. So it's a New York State agency that focuses on energy research, and they have lots of programs that make clean energy more accessible to everyone. I specifically work with the low to moderate income programming, and I think sometimes when you think of environment or clean energy, you think about those spaces. Sometimes low to moderate income folks might feel a little left out, or it might not be accessible to them if they can't get an electric vehicle or a whole home heat pump system or install solar panels on their house, things like that, that have like a pretty high upfront cost. But I help folks realize that there are programs out there that can help them, and that's what a part of what NYSERDA, those programs are meant to do. So yeah, just making clean energy and sustainability more of a reality for everyone.
Yeah. So the legal profession obviously can impact the environment in so many different ways, depending on what type of law one practices, and even you could be an attorney that's not even practicing law. So from a high level, the legal profession, there's a tension because attorneys on the one hand are hired to represent clients, and the legal profession needs to put those clients' interests before their own. So when I, not wearing my suit and my tie, which is 99% of the time, I am a granola munching tree hugger who would rather be outside all day without my phone. That will not pay my bills. I have 3 young children, so I do need to show up to work. And so there's this kind of tension that I need to be honest about. Sometimes clients do come to us, not necessarily to evade the law or to do things that are bad for the environment, but sometimes their interests are not aligned with mine personally. With that said, I took an oath to represent my clients to the best of my ability and to uphold the Constitution as an attorney. So I do represent them in meeting those goals. What I do in that respect, though, is I inject as much of my principles, my values, and the other places where I sit with respect to disadvantaged communities, low-income areas, diverse people who have been displaced by projects, and that doesn't leave me. So when I work on projects or matters, I do advise my clients, hey, maybe this isn't the most equitable approach. We should consider this alternative. Or, hey, I know that we don't have to discuss environmental justice issues as part of this project or as part of this deal, but let's look at some of the indoor air health issues, because a lot of your workers are from the low-income communities, and perhaps when we go to sell this company in a few years, you'll be in a better position to say that you stood up for your employees and make sure they had the best health, that you were cognizant of health issues during the time that you owned the company. So I do grapple with that tension, and the legal profession, I think, does a lot. But what I do is my attorney profile is one aspect of my identity. I do other things that I use my legal skills, but it helps me kind of supplement the feel-good things, the things that I know drive my values. So for example, I co-chair the Environmental Justice Committee for the New York State Bar Association. I sit on boards of 2 or 3 nonprofits, 3 nonprofits, 2 of them are environmental oriented, and I bring my entire personality and my history to that. I started a podcast a few years ago specifically on this topic of green careers and how people can break into environmental careers and how they pivot from other professions into environmental careers, because I think it's an important discussion to be had. And I'm an immigrant. I was born in the Dominican Republic. And as a young kid, I became extremely ill from water contamination. I almost died as a 6-year-old. And it was only until maybe 5 or 6 years ago that I realized that experience as a young child, maybe in the back of my mind, had continuously put environmental issues kind of just as part of my identity. So I continue speaking about that and the importance of taking care of the environment, each other, putting humans at the forefront of projects. So again, there is this tension, but I like to work with the tension as opposed to pushing it away.
As far as NEST is concerned, we have, I would say, 3 or 4 ways in which we benefit various communities. So in addition to focusing on clean energy, we are also a climate justice organization. So the lens through which we work is very much along the lines that the 2 previous speakers were talking about in terms of privileging those who have been first and worst in experiencing our current system. Here locally, the Binghamton Community Power Project provides residents with knowledge about DIY solutions, so even if they're renters, they can do something about their energy situation. If their landlord's no good, if their landlord is good, then there are programs that the landlord can use to benefit both themselves and their tenants. We also are working with, as I mentioned, students from the school age into college. Clean energy careers, their diversity in every way, right? Any major can be relevant in clean energy careers. You can be a line worker for a utility, you can be a graphic designer, you can be a lawyer, you can be an educator. There's really nothing that would stop you from going into these except maybe you've never heard of them, right? So, you know, when you think about when you're a kid, well, what do you know about careers? A doctor, a lawyer, a nurse, teacher, and so on. This career is even more obscure. So another way we benefit young people especially, but we also do this in the community, is making that opportunity visible. Then on the state and national level, we work with counterpart organizations. We're part of 3 different coalitions. And so in New York State, Albany is our capital, and currently things are not well there. Obviously things are far worse in Washington. But we continue to work with our counterparts to move, hopefully, this state and this country in the right direction, both in terms of climate and in terms of climate justice, meaning that we need to replace our dirty, dangerous, unsafe, expensive system with one that is not dirty, dangerous, or unsafe, but it needs to be affordable and it needs to be accessible. Right? We can easily replace a corporate-controlled dirty energy system with a corporate-controlled clean energy system that continues to exclude what I would now say is the vast majority of the residents of the United States because of what's happened in the last 50 years, basically my adult lifetime. We've seen a situation of increasing inequality, deliberate destruction of the public sector, and now we're living in what I call a state of emergency. And so, you know, we try to address our immediate objectives that have to do with energy and climate, but we are also doing what we can to support the rights of immigrants, for example, which is an exceedingly challenging and important role right now.
Me, I graduated in 2024. I guess I'll go back a little bit. Similarly, I've always loved the environment. I grew up on Long Island. So I actually did a lot of their youth programming growing up. I did their Marine camp at CCE Suffolk County, at their Suffolk County office. So I grew up with the extension. So I guess they would kind of call me like a lifer at this point. But that's a big call, like those who work for extension who did 4-H camps as a kid. So I did that. I did, maybe some of you guys were on your high school environthon teams. I did that. I did research in high school on the environment, and then I was in the FRI program at Binghamton, the first year research immersion program. I was in the environmental visualization with drones program, which was awesome, because we got to learn how to fly a drone. It was really cool. And yeah, so I've always loved the environment, but always kind of struggled to like pinpoint exactly where I wanted to go within that sphere. But in my senior year of college, I had gone to an environmental career fair. I think NEST might have helped put it on, potentially. And I had met with a girl there, and she had graduated from Binghamton literally like a year before me. And she was a keynote speaker, and she was at her booth for a company that had a branch in Ithaca, which is only an hour away. It's where Cornell University is. And we had gotten to talking, And she was like, you know, like, just give me your information. We have a job opening up. And why don't you apply to it? I'll get you in contact with my boss. And that's how I got my first job out of college. So I didn't even have to submit an application. I just kind of had a phone conversation with her supervisor, and then they were able to make the hire from there. So definitely like going to career fairs and just talking to people and really connecting. I know, like, I heard it like all 4 years, but it really does work. And it really matters. It really matters when they know who you are. And even if you do still have to apply and everything, they'll see your name and they're like, oh yeah, I talked to Caitlyn. So that was cool, and I loved that job. And I worked in Ithaca. I lived here but worked in Ithaca. And we work with a lot of organizations through that job, one of which was Cornell Cooperative Extension and the Clean Energy Hubs through CCE Tompkins. So I had just reached out to some of their staff members I was going to be working with in my internship, and was just like, do you want to have a one-on-one? I can meet you at your office. I'd love to just see what's going on. I loved CCE growing up. I'd never been to the Ithaca office, so me and she's like a friend now, and we work together now. We had set up a meeting to meet, and we just kind of chatted, and we just walked around. They have like a cool like river there and like a park, and we just walked around and chatted about our lives and our journeys with college and everything, and talked about what I did, talked about what she did as part of, she was a community energy advisor, she is now. So we just got to talking about it, and we just caught up every so often through my internship. And that internship ended, so I was looking for a job, and I saw that, I still live in Binghamton, I saw that Cornell Cooperative Extension of Tioga County, which is about 25 minutes away, was hiring for a community energy advisor. And I was like, oh yeah, like Lee was a community energy advisor, like I should just give her a call and see like what's up. And so we talked about the job, and technically it was after the position had technically like expired, but she was like, just send me your application, like it'll be fine. And yeah, and then I got a call to interview that same day. So another reason why getting to know the people you work with, even outside of your current organization, any organizations that you have relationships with, just get to know them, because it means a lot when you just want to have a one-on-one with somebody and just see how you guys can develop your relationship. So yeah, because now I work really closely with her, and we're friends, and it's awesome, and we go to hockey games together, and yeah, it's awesome. So network.
Was that you met Lee, right?
Yeah.
At the career fair?
Oh, I met a different girl at the career fair.
What was the job?
It was Block Power.
Oh my goodness.
Yes.
I know those
All right.
guys.
At Block Power?
Yeah, I interviewed Keith for my podcast.
You did?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah, I love
that's
those
so
guys.
crazy.
I love Darnell. They're great guys.
Yeah, I don't.
Ithaca didn't work out, unfortunately.
Yeah.
No,
So
but
Block
Ithaca
Power,
did.
Block Power is a company that had this really ambitious goal of electrifying. You know how we electrify cars. Their goal is to electrify buildings, like on mass scale. So they're still doing great things, but those people are great. So to Caitlyn's point, though, the career for that, I forgot to mention, that's how I got my environmental consulting gig. I went to a career fair here, met whoever was here from the recruiting office for the company, had a really nice discussion, submitted my resume, and then I called her and said, hey, I was really interested in the company. She goes, yeah, well, I have a stack of resumes. I'm like, well, like we had a nice chat and you guys like seem nice. Can you kind of make sure that at least mine gets reviewed? So to Caitlyn's point, the initial warm touch is great, but then you have to kind of take some initiative and do some follow-up. It's a little, you don't have to be cringe or weird about it. I think for the most part, you could just be really transparent and say, hey, I'm really interested in learning more about what you do. People love speaking about what they do. I think that's a really astute point for Caitlyn.
Honestly, also a very small world. Here we are, we all know about Block Power. In my own case, even though my path was different, when I got my first academic job, I got that academic job in large part because I had made a connection with the chair of the department. They were interviewing at the conference. We developed a relationship. I was what they were looking for. but the name was there. Similarly, when I got into the energy field, someone who had met with Ken Schlatter, the former executive director of Cooperative Extension, was here doing a presentation, and I told her, I'm looking for a gig, and she said, you need to talk to Ken. Relationships are everything.
Yeah,
They are everything.
Yeah, especially now. Anyone, I hate to say this, but anyone's resume can look really, really good with the use of the different AI tools out there. You can take someone that perhaps hasn't had the same experience as maybe one of you, and you've had maybe great internships and experiences, but now it's becoming increasingly difficult for hiring managers or people that are recruiters to distinguish candidates because the cover letters all look so polished and the resumes all look so tight. So like right now is the time to double down on relationships, and yes, relationships within the school and within people that you live with, but you kind of have to be out in the wild. And it doesn't have to be this big grandiose thing where you have to go to California for a week-long conference. It could be local things where you could go with one of your classmates and say, hey, there's a thing going on at the community center, it's a panel on so-and-so. You attend, you listen to that, and then afterwards you go to the speakers and say, hey, I have one quick question, or that was a great panel, do you mind if I reach out to you? Like that counts as networking too, it's genuine, and you don't have to put yourself in this kind of awkward place, but just sending out a blind resume right now, you might as well like be, you're asking for a miracle. You need a warm entry point.
Yeah, I'm in the process of hiring for 2 positions now. I had interviews this morning, I have interviews this afternoon, and for reasons I don't need to get into, the resumes weren't written for this job. But the interview questions we had got at the fact that these were actually, most of them, very strong candidates. We would never have known they were relevant to us from the paper. So, yeah, absolutely.
The profession has evolved quite a bit in the last 20 years or so, where the discussions on environmental, and this is mostly driven because the environmental movement and environmental regulations as they were developed in this country really came top down from the federal government and looked at clean water, clean air, hazardous waste, solid waste, chemicals management, and then that then dictated how companies operated and how municipalities navigated those spaces, and then that created jobs for people like myself, lawyers or consultants. And that was kind of the ecosystem at the beginning of the environmental profession. The last few years, it's become clear that if the private sector is not focused on environmental, social governance issues, sustainability, climate change, biodiversity impacts, they are going to be running into a PR disaster. They are going to be leaving money at the table, and they're going to be exposing themselves to more liability and risk. So now, the change has been that attorneys, whether you're an environmental attorney, a labor and employment attorney, a corporate attorney, a direct litigator, almost everyone needs to be somewhat versed in environmental issues because it's so pervasive across everything that happens that drives the economy and that drives government. So that's been, I think, for me, a positive change, that now the conversation has gone from something that a bunch of tree huggers did over there to now something that where the tree huggers are part of the discussion. And I'm happy that that's happening, and I think it's becoming more and more, it's happening with a higher frequency. The fact is that these discussions, if you're not having them on a board level or a company level, you're going to be left behind. So I think that's been a positive change. I mentioned too, and I'll be quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
So right out of law school, I took the bar exam, New York, New Jersey, and then within like 3 days I was working at my first legal job at a law firm as a law clerk, not an associate just yet. And right away, I was working on a water contamination case on the plaintiff side. So we were representing a water district whose water had been contaminated from dry cleaning and industrial activities. And we were facing what's called a motion for summary judgment, where the defense side wants to get the case dismissed on issues of law, so not facts, on legal issues. And this is the first day of any job. You know, you're filling out paperwork, you're setting up the computer, you're doing HR stuff. So I did that day one. Day two, the lead attorney that I'm working with drops some huge memo on my desk and goes, hey, that's the motion for summary judgment. I haven't worked on it at all. We have about 2 weeks to respond, but I need your first draft in like 4 days. And I said, all right, this is it, let's do it. I was able to then take my my science and environmental studies training that I got here, my experience as my field work, and I crafted a really creative argument that was able to then, and I convinced the attorney that we had this factual issue that the contamination was in fact coming from the defendant's source, and I modeled for him kind of like what the transport of this contaminant might be based on some journal studies that I read on dense non-aqueous phase liquids, like this really kooky, complex stuff that even today I probably couldn't explain it, but then I could. Anyway, my attorney that I worked with bought my presentation and said, yeah, go with it, run with it. I drafted kind of this kick-ass memo, and we ended up winning that motion for summary judgment, which allowed our case to then go to trial, and we settled before trial, and this community whose water was contaminated was able to get, I think, like $15 million for water treatment that they had paid out of pocket. So that was one that was extremely fulfilling for me, and it felt validating that I belonged. A second one is a project I'm currently working on, which is in a disadvantaged community way in upstate New York. We represent the seller of an old smelting plant. It's a chemical manufacturer, and these smelting plants are just the dirtiest of the dirty sites. I was able to convince both my client, which is the seller, and the buyer that we need to put environmental justice at the forefront of this discussion. There are tribal issues with low-income communities, and I said, hey, yes, Department of Environmental Conservation is going to force us to have an analysis about this later on when we apply for permit transfers and such, but let's have discussions now with the communities so that we can get ahead of this and we can start building good relationships now, and it'll make the path a year or 2 years from now a little smoother. And both my client and the seller are on board. So I'm particularly proud of that because it goes back to what I was saying. It's applying this lens of this justice lens as part of my values into kind of the private practice of law in corporate America.
This isn't Tonawanda.
I can't say that.
I forgot. You can't say all kinds of things.
I can't say
My
that.
apologies.
Because I'm currently working.
Yeah, now. I should know better.
Yeah. So the way my job works is I'm a community energy advisor. So a big part of my job is I have advisees that come to me for help, that they have an energy issue, an energy problem, a concern, or they want to be involved in a program, things like that, and I kind of help them navigate and guide them through that issue. So in the winter, NYSERDA has funds for what we call a no heat. So that's someone who between September and May, their heating system dies and they do not have the funds to replace it, which in a state like ours, that's dangerous for certain communities, for everyone, but also for people with young children, people who are older. So that's like a big part of our job in the winter, is helping people navigate that system, because there's like working with state funding, working with the Department of Social Services. Those things are complicated, they take a long time, and it is so easy for projects to slip through the cracks. It really is. That's why they kind of have to have us be there and help people get through them, and kind of know the questions to ask and things like that. But I'd had a man reach out to me saying his furnace had died, and he was low income, 3 children, all under 7. One of his children was very sick, so there was just really no money to drop $6,000-7,000 on a new furnace, and he was in total like crisis panic mode, understandably. So we had, he came into the office, we went through the application, together. We were able to go down to the DSS office and get some required paperwork, because for government programs, you need to have, there's a lot of paperwork involved, usually.
Especially that one.
Especially this one, and working with DSS, yeah. Not to go too much on a tangent, but so we're able to do that, navigate that together, and I was able to talk to a contractor before he applied to ask, like, hey, when this project gets approved, can we please, can you take this project on? And, you know, and I explained like what the deal was, and part of my job was also getting to know the contractors in the area that serve the program and building relationships with them, so that when projects that are a little tricky come along, they're willing to work with me, but for the energy advisors to work with me and talk about solutions. They know me, there's goodwill there. It really helps speed things along, and give the client the benefit of the doubt. So they got to the house, they found, you know, there was no insulation in the house, the heating system was dead, and then also they unfortunately discovered the hot water heater was improperly venting, which is very dangerous because no one wants CO2 in the home, especially with young children. And there was someone in the house that had already had, was a vulnerable person. So, but the program covered was $10,000. There was a lot more than $10,000 worth of work to be done in that house. So this was a situation where I was the advocate for the client because he was just completely in crisis and panic mode. It was in January. We had probably, I think this is like the second coldest January we've had in the past 10 years. It was dangerous and it was scary. So I'm their advocate, working with the contractor, working with NYSERDA, working with the Department of Social Service, the office in Albany, and then our own Tioga County office to try to see what we can do for this family. Won't get into the details, but eventually we had come to an agreement where if the customer was able to provide a $500 customer contribution, then the program would fully insulate the house, replace the furnace, and would replace the hot water heater and make sure it was venting properly and wasn't, distributing any harmful material. And yeah, so it took about a month, unfortunately, to get this family heat again in a really, really cold part of this year. But I felt really proud that I was able to help them and help them navigate this, because who knows what would have happened if someone wasn't there to be their advocate and to so that other organizations would give them the benefit of the doubt. There was goodwill. They were able to make exceptions and have workarounds in order to help this family out. So yeah, that's something a project I'm proud of.
And you should be. I know intimately how hard it is to pull off what you did. And this is also an illustration of where we are as a country and as a state right now. Programs should not be in this situation. It's not inevitable. So I guess I'll mention two things myself. One I'll keep short. Our Energy Corps internship program is hands down the most successful thing that I've probably ever done in my career. We've had about 130, mostly Binghamton University students go through. We keep track of these young people, some of them not so young anymore, and they get jobs. Not all of them go into energy, of course, but an appreciable number go into energy, appreciable number stay in the state. And we've created a system whereby we can pretty much say, if you come in, you do well, and you really wanted to go from here into something that's at least somewhat related, you will have a much easier time than if you didn't. The other thing I'll say, and maybe it's because of what you were saying earlier, Caitlyn, it took me a long time to figure out what I had to contribute, because when I was your age, the world and the economy were a very different place. I was very privileged, we weren't rich, but it was an easy time, right, to be coming out of college. That is not true now. And what I discovered is I've always had very strong equity and social justice values. That's my upbringing. I know how to convene, I know how to educate, I know how to communicate, and so I love bringing people together. And I've been part of creating a statewide and a nationwide energy democracy organization. And the energy democracy organization here is the Energy Democracy Alliance. And we've accomplished a whole series of things that are a little bit nerdy and a little bit wonky, but the one that's probably the biggest thing, and we did not do this alone, but we were part of the movement that created New York's climate law, the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act. It was a big, big team effort, but though Andrew Cuomo will take credit for that law, he didn't come up with it. That was invented by another coalition that we're part of, and we forced it through, and that was a great moment for us. And I guess one last thing to say professionally is you will have mountains and valleys. That was a huge victory. And then back in 2014, we had another huge victory by stopping fracking in law. Now is a hard time, but I'm confident we'll have better times ahead.
Yes, I graduated not only 2 years ago. It was just horrible job market as well, which I'm sure is a really big stressor on all of your minds right now. And I was also, like, I've always been a planner, always. So one thing that I've learned that I would like to impart on you is that there isn't just one path for you that's gonna lead to a happy, fulfilling, successful life. It's not like right now you have to pressure yourself into deciding, well, what path am I gonna be the happiest? Like, what's gonna lead to the best life for me? There are so many paths that will be successful and lead to a fruitful life. You can change your path kind of like at any time, or at least at this point in your life, you totally can. And you're really not locked into anything. And I think that's really important. I remember I was so stressed, like, well, is the decision I make now, is the job I take now gonna dictate my career path for the rest of my life? The answer is no, it will not. It totally won't. If you're a planner and you wanna know what the next 20 years of your life look like I am still, admittedly, it's okay. There's so many successful paths you can take, like truly, there's so many. There's almost like not a wrong option. If it's what you make it and what you gain, what you choose to gain from those experiences, you will be happy. And if you stay true to your heart and be authentic, you will be happy and you will feel fulfilled, I promise.
Okay, it's a hard one to follow. You have only one advantage as people who are going to soon be looking for jobs that I did not have. You have universal access to information, and too much information. When I applied for jobs coming out of college, it was all paper, right? Ads in newspapers and things like that. One of the other advantages of that is you now have a lot of tools, like the career tools that exist here now, they were not here at all when I was here, not at all. And part of what I think is really valuable is learning what you want. Like, what kind of situation do you want to find yourself in? Like, you talked about the ability to be able to be home a little bit more and to have the kind of job that you have. We have different kinds of jobs. Some people might say, no, I would never want to come indoors. I'd want to stay outside the whole time. Some people might say, oh, I want to work for a big firm. Or they might say, well, no, I don't. I want to work for smaller places. In a smaller place, I get to do everything, right? Figure that out for yourself. Figure out what, at least at this moment, your strengths are, your skills. The make connections piece is, I just pound away at it. It's never too late to start. You probably all have LinkedIn pages. There's now a LinkedIn page where you can search for alumni of this institution on many different levels, by majors, by years, by whatever. Take advantage of all of that. I had a colleague, somebody who was a staff member with me, who went with me to a conference in Syracuse, and there was an engineering firm. She's now working in Chicago for them. One of the things that makes me sad about my job is because of the lack of money, I can't retain people, which is awful. The last thing I will say has little to do directly with careers. Learn how to manage your money, save your money, and stay out of debt. I have friends, a couple, they've done everything right. They spend the summers in Latin America working remotely with their little girl. It's all beautiful. I did not make those choices, and that's bad. Don't do what I did.
Well, I'm not going to go give you financial advice. I went to law school and took a lot of debt. But I do go to Latin America with my family. So.
Well, but my guess is that being a lawyer is not terribly remunerated, but what do I know?
I'm doing okay. So I'll say one or two things. I'll use this opportunity to plug that podcast, because what started happening in 2021, 2022, I found myself having discussions with environmental professionals, just conversations, engineers that I need to hire for projects, or environmental economists, or other environmental lawyers. And we always found ourselves in this kind of conversation. Hey, how'd you end up here? Like, you're 15 years into your career, you're 3 years into your career, I always asking that question, how'd you end up here? So I said, all right, I'm having these discussions kind of in isolated places. Let me do something and make a podcast out of this. So it's called Green Collar Careers, and it's literally me interviewing people that are doing interesting work in the environmental space, and I interview them for about 30 to 45 minutes, and they give me their whole career journey for you to consume and get ideas. And one of my recent guests is the executive director of career and professional development at the Yale School for the Environment. And he provided what he calls his community of practice framework, where they ask all of the graduate students who are thinking about environmental careers or leveling up their environmental careers. And the advice that he gives all of them, and you could listen to the episode, this is what he discusses. It's 4 questions that allow you to focus. First, do the thing is, what are you interested in? And that isn't obvious. That's not something that is obvious, but it's within you. You just have to kind of like sit with it for a little bit and ask yourself the right questions. And the first one he asks is, what problems are you trying to solve? Or what problems are you interested in trying to solve? Is it a water issue, a contamination issue? Is it an energy issue? Is it something with respect to legal and policy? What interests you? And that's something that only you can answer. The second is, what skills or tools either do you have or do you want to have? So you look at what problems are you trying to solve, what skills or methods do you need to have or that you already have? And you can kind of explore these questions. The third one is, geographically speaking, what community do you want to serve? Is it the international community? Is it New York State? Is it Tioga County? Is it New York City? Is it California? There's something in you that perhaps you haven't even thought about. What community or do you want to serve? And then the last one is, what sector do you think you could see yourself providing the best value? The environmental space, climate, sustainability, super broad. I mean, legal is just one, but there's the government sector, there's nonprofit organizations, there are municipalities, there's private companies that manufacture this stuff. They need environmental people. There are there's industry. There's so many different types of people that would be willing and happy to have you. So once you look at those 4 things and you sit with it and you take the time to actually do it, don't plug it into ChatGPT and think you're going to get something, or Claude. Sit with it and actually do that introspective work. Then you can kind of bring that out and tailor your career towards something that genuinely interests you. The second thing I'll say, and I'll leave you with this, all of you are here for a reason. Yes, Parker's PR machine got you here and convinced you to be here. But no, all jokes aside, there's a reason that you decided to, give an afternoon of a beautiful day to be indoors with us, listening to this. I don't know what that reason is. I don't know what drew you here. I don't know what genuinely interests you, but I would invite you and encourage you to pursue that. To pursue that very sincerely. It's the one thing that I've used as my North Star that has always kept me on the side of doing what I love. I've never chased the money. I make good money. I've never chased the people, and I work with great people, but I've always chased this interest that I've had since I was a kid, that the planet requires people who care for it, because I sincerely believe the planet cares for us. And that's been kind of my guiding post. So I encourage you to join me and follow me that.
Brilliant. I think
Very well.
Yeah. That